Okay, so for my watch, it is 5 after. So we'll go ahead and kick in to our session today because we have quite an ambitious agenda for everyone here. Welcome to the PEOF virtual session. Today, we will discuss the future of healthcare by looking at the ethical, technological, and social dimensions of patient matchmaking. So we appreciate you joining us today. If you'll go back, we could go back to the first slide. My name is Ebony Bueller, and I am the UPATI Connect and Learning Lab Coordinator at UPATI. I will be moderating today's session. I am joined by an esteemed group of panelists who I'm eager to introduce you to shortly. And additionally, we are supported by my colleague Boyan Teagan from UPATI, as well as Daniela Ubia and Matt Seifert from Synergist. So welcome and thank you all for joining us. We can go to the next slide, please. So what are we doing today, right? We're in our virtual session for the Patient Engagement Open Forum, which is a blend of online and face-to-face events designed to collaboratively enhance patient engagement in a multi-stakeholder environment. The goal is to offer a comprehensive view of the patient engagement scene, including its various participants, and to promote cooperation and overcome the fragmentation that we see as common in patient engagement work. Please go to the next slide. So to kind of further this point of inclusivity and removing those barriers, all of the virtual sessions are now accessible in 50+ languages with instant translations available for you to choose from during the session. So at this point, Matt Seifert will be sharing the worldly translation. Go ahead and click on the Got It, and you'll open that. And then you should see, everyone should be seeing, and of course I can't see everyone's screen right now. Once you press open, you should see a pop-up come up, and it'll look a little bit like a chat box. I already have mine to translate to US English. As you could probably hear, that is my native language, but you press that, you click on that drop down and you can choose any language in the over 50+ options they have here. And it'll translate what we're saying in real time. Now, if you want to click back to the chat itself, if you go down to your screen, and we have it in the side we're sharing here, you'll see a share screen in green, and directly to the left will be a Q&A box. So all questions during this session should be put into the Q&A box. And if you want to chat, there's also the chat box. Now, when you want to come back to this translation, again, there's this share screen, and then you can go over to your right and you'll see an apps icon with a number 1 at the top. You click on that and that brings you back to the worldly translation. So we'll move on from there, but if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A box, and our colleagues at Synergist will help to get you sorted out if this is not as straightforward. So can we please move to the next slide? Thank you. So we're getting to the end of the admin portion of this discussion. But before we begin, we had a few things that are a request of ours that will help you and your fellow participants get the most out of this session today. First, we ask that everyone please be present and engaged. All microphones will be muted during the panel, but we will open up for the Q&A, and then you can verbalize your question or continue to type them into the Q&A during that point. Again, please share your questions in the Q&A box and comment and feedbacks in the chat box. This session will be recorded, just so everyone knows. And then finally, we see this as just the beginning of an ongoing conversation. And so we hope that you can take from it as well, and we will certainly be taking the highlights from it with us. So if we can go to the next slide. Great. For the remainder of our time, as I mentioned before, we have a very ambitious and active agenda plan. In a moment, I'm pleased to let this great group of panelists introduce themselves before we kick into our panel discussion. Then we'll open up for Q&As for you. It's a short period of time, but we'll be trying to make sure we get as many questions answered as possible in that 15 minutes. And then it's time to turn the tables a little bit, where we'll be asking some of our most pressing questions of you in our Slido. So this will be a bit of a participant co-creation time. And then finally, we'll wrap and close. So if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so without further ado, I am joined today by a group that well represents our multi-stakeholder ethos. I would like to hand the mic, as it were, first to Lotte, then Katie, and then Justin to introduce themselves and their work in patient matchmaking and platforms. So Lotte, let's begin with you.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. So I'm Lotte Waaiens. I'm coming from the company J&J Innovative Medicine. I am the business owner of a patient platform, which is called Janssen with Me. And in my role, I am very close collaborating with the patient engagement teams, but also communication and public affairs teams to deliver and to feed regional content to the local markets. And talking about local markets, I'm also having a very close collaboration and connection with local OPCO leads. So in the countries, those digital leads, they are also part of my stakeholder group. And together with them, we co-create new services and features to continuously actually improve the platform for our end users. And our end users is actually the general public, but with a slightly focus, of course, to patients and caregivers.
Thank you, Lotte. Katie, please.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Katie Joyner, and I'm the Co-Chief Executive Officer at Myeloma Patients Europe. MP is an umbrella organization. We currently have 49 members in 31 countries, and we advocate for better access, treatment, and care for myeloma patients. And I was invited to speak today because I take a lead on the work that we do with industry and helping to improve and drive effective patient engagement throughout the drug development process and in other areas that we can collaborate. And a few years ago, MP developed a myeloma community task force where we wanted to provide kind of an agile and effective response to the number of patient engagement requests that we were getting from both industry and academic institutions. And so we established this kind of standing group of expert patients, advocates, and carers who are trained to provide input, and developed a process where we can respond to these requests in a timely way so that we're not missing opportunities for engagement. So it's been, I think, a real opportunity for us to engage in an effective way and to kind of track that engagement over time. Still improvements to be made, which we'll discuss today, but I think it's allowed us to really push forward in our ability to work with a number of stakeholders. So looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks.
Thank you. And please, Justin.
Yep. Saved maybe the best for last, who knows? But my name is Justin Berkbickler. I'm the Director of Project Management at Savvy Cooperative. And what Savvy Cooperative does day in and day out is we connect patients and caregivers and survivors of all sorts of different health conditions directly with various different companies who need to be getting the patient insights, and we help turn patient insights into actionable steps. So we are getting the patient stakeholder perspective early on in the process, whether it's clinical trial development, new apps, new drugs being made. We make sure that we bring the patient voice in. Beyond my role as the Director of Project Management to make sure all of our projects flow well, I bring my own patient experience to the team as a survivor of cancer. So when about coming up on 8 years now. I was diagnosed with cancer. I'm luckily been in remission after going through chemotherapy. So I always am just honored to have the opportunity to make sure that the patient voice is centered in everything that we do. And that's a big part of the reason why Savvy was invited to join this call today. And I'm just excited to kick this off and talk with everybody.
Thank you, Justin. What Justin was also too modest to mention is that he is an amazing team member and pinch hitter. His colleague Molly Schreiber was going to join us today, but unfortunately couldn't due to an illness. So Justin is stepping in, and we're delighted to have him. And personally, I'm delighted to speak with each of you today. If we can go to our next slide, please. Great. So as the title suggests, we're during our discussion, we will break down the ideas around patient matchmaking and patient platforms along the areas of ethical considerations, technical enhancements, and finally, social implications of all of this. So for now, we will stop sharing the presentation so that you, our audience, can engage more with our panelists. Again, please use the Q&A box next to the share screen if you have any questions, and then that you would like for us to get back to following the panel discussion. So without further ado, Lalata, I would love to start with you. How, as we think about ethical considerations, so from your perspective, how do patient matchmaking systems and other patient platforms, you can insert Jansen with me here, ensure the protection of patient privacy and autonomy while fostering meaningful connections? Can you share some examples of safeguards you guys use or that should be used as a standard?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about the experience that we have now within J&J. I'm having in the first place a very close cooperation in the early stages of having new ideas of new features and service implementations with our compliance teams. And the compliance teams for me is including the privacy managers, the legal managers, the data protection consuls, the ISRM, and the healthcare compliance. So it's a big audience, let's say, or a big stakeholder group that we have a close collaboration with. And when we connect with them, it's in the very early stage of a new idea already. So I also have a weekly connection with them to just brainstorm on how we can put a new service in the market, let's say in our patient platform, but also on our HCP facing platform, because we're not, we're also having an HCP platform. So that's one thing. So we have that close collaboration. And I think that's the very first point, that you need to have that strong connection with them to understand more what we can do to make sure that we have the patient security in first place. And then coming to practicalities, we have an encrypted database, so where we can store patient data, PI3 data. So that is one thing that we have, of course. And the other thing is that we also have a process in place to delete the data that we don't need anymore, or we anonymize the data so that we can keep the safety of the patient's data. And we do that with the process. So meaning that after a certain time of period of inactivity of that user, we are going to either delete or anonymize that data so that we are fully transparent, compliant, and we keep the patient data safe.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Katie, I'd be interested to understand how Lata's response resonates with you as you hear this and think about it from the patient perspective.
Yeah, so I think, when working with companies, obviously there are so many laws and regulations that they have to follow, that we have to follow in Europe around privacy and GDPR. And I actually think industry is quite vigilant. Obviously, you have so many teams in place internally around data privacy, around compliance, around risk, around technology and things like that. So actually, I think this is an area where we see, usually eye to eye on ensuring that the least amount of patient data is processed as possible, is shared as possible, and that we all want to make sure that we're following the correct laws and regulations. So I've found that in working with industry, this is actually kind of a good source of information and that they can be like real partners in making sure that we're all doing this in a safe and effective way and keeping patients data protected. From our side, for us, we tried to just reduce as much as possible any data that's shared. So in our work, we're doing a lot of written feedback that's shared with industry and academic institutions. So none of that needs to include any identifying patient information. All of that can be anonymized. I or my colleague are the main points of contact so that companies don't need to engage directly with patients. In the event that they do, or that's necessary for the engagement, we just make sure that everything is very clear for patients from the beginning. They have a full understanding of the kind of data that will be shared. They consent to sharing that data. They understand that they can withdraw consent at any time, or if they're attending a virtual meeting, they want to keep their camera off or use a pseudonym, all of that's fine. So we just give them as many options as possible to make sure that they feel comfortable. And I think the other big thing that we've worked on a lot, and it's not specific to, well, there are privacy elements of it, but it's also really around burden, is we just want to reduce the amount of administration, operation, coordination burden that's ever placed on a patient who's willing to give their time and input into research and trial design and educational materials. So there was a point at which companies were asking to sign individual agreements with patients, and I would get calls from patients like, I don't understand what this means. I'm trying to be on my vacation and I just got a 40-page contract, and things like that just really aren't appropriate and shouldn't be happening. So we took all of that away early on to say, absolutely not, like, you will work directly with the organization. There shouldn't really be any direct contact with patients, and certainly no contracts or any of that, not only from a legal and compliance and data protection side, but also from a burden side. There's no reason that a patient who's, again, willing to give their time and expertise into this process needs to be worried about those kinds of things. So I think there's a lot that we can do to be a bit of I don't want to say gatekeeper, but just to be an appropriate facilitator between the companies and the institutions seeking the input and the ones providing it.
I can really appreciate that. I think that there's certainly a number of different ways to go about that, but I see that as actually a real benefit of working through patient organizations directly. So thank you for that. So now I will turn over to Justin with my next question. So how can patient matchmaking systems avoid biases that may exclude certain populations from benefiting from these services? And what steps are being taken to ensure diversity and inclusion in these platforms? What you're seeing, what your organization stands behind, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd echo actually a lot of the things that Katie said. I know one of the big things that we have done in our work is to make sure that everything is very patient friendly. Like Katie said, no one should be getting a 40-page contract. I've been in that perspective, and I have a master's degree, and I consider myself to be someone who's educated, and I get confused. And so if we're really trying to include as many diverse and different perspectives, we need to make sure that everything is accessible, from any sort of language that is used. I know one thing that we do is, and I get caught on this sometimes, is my project management team, we sit there and we say, this question makes sense to us as we're trying to screen to get people into our projects, but is that going to make sense? And something as similar as, I had a conversation with a advocacy organization the other day about breast cancer subtypes, and the question that we presented to them was, has your doctor told you this? And they said, well, sometimes it's not a doctor, sometimes it's a social worker, sometimes it's a genetic counselor. So based on their feedback, we said we change it from doctor to healthcare provider or healthcare professional. And that's really hits the nail on the head there, is if you want to be as diverse and inclusive as possible, go to the organizations or go to the individuals and ask them, what will this resonate with your community? Like I said, I have testicular cancer, or I had testicular cancer. I would never pretend to be able to speak on behalf of somebody living in rural America going through colon cancer. That's not my experience. That's not my story to share. So going directly to those people and sharing, hey, how can we make this? And then taking a step further, and how can we partner with you to share this with your community? And then the obvious things also, as you're developing your different patient matchmaking platforms and whatever sort of marketing materials or branding you put out there, make sure it does represent a wide range of experiences. You don't want to see, you know, the standard stock images of people, you know, use real patients who have gone through this and, you know, compensate them for their time and their likeness and everything, but really making a big effort and a strong dedication to make sure that every voice is equally represented, because every story is equally valid, and we can't improve things if we're going just for one person with one specific experience.
I like that. I like that a lot. I would love to also open this question up to Katie and Lotte to get your thoughts on both Justin's response, but also how what you're doing to around the topic of inclusion in your work.
Yeah, I think what we do is with our patient engagement teams, they are very close collaborating with the patient organization, and I can only echo what Justin was saying about asking them what they need. And I think that is also what we are trying to achieve as well, because myself as a patient platform manager, I cannot directly go to the patients and ask for what their needs are, but we can do that by those or through those patient organizations, and ask them like, what are the needs from a platform perspective? What can we do to help to make life easier for the patients and the caregiver? Because we always think of the patients, of course, but there is also a big group of caregivers that need support and needs tools that provide or that can help them through the process that they're going through as well, because they have their own challenges that they need to overcome. So I think asking for user feedback to those patients that are connected to patient organizations, we can make our platforms better, and all our tools as well, because not only the platforms, but for everyone, it can be beneficial to just ask and for the need, and yeah, make sure that the patient's voice is there.
Thank you. Yeah, totally agreed.
Yeah, and from our perspective, we struggle with this a bit. I mean, it's interesting, Justin, you have such a Savvy has the task of representing several different diseases areas. So you have to really, consider the different perspectives across oncology. And at MP, we're representing myeloma and AL amyloidosis patients, but we have the challenge of representing the perspectives of Europe, which is very heterogeneous. So we struggle a lot with that, in the sense that everything's done in English. So already you've created a huge barrier to entry for patients whose native language, or who aren't native enough speakers to read a protocol, or to read even maybe patient-facing materials. So we've already basically removed the input of thousands of myeloma patients who need to operate in their national language. So that's a huge challenge for us. The other issue that we face is, there are a lot of different, so myeloma is a relapsing and remitting disease. So we have patients that might be very well and fit, and then at other points in their disease experience are going to be quite unwell, and they're not going to be able to participate in something like patient input and patient engagement. So how do we ensure that we're bringing in the diverse voices and experiences of patients who might have, who aren't native English speakers or aren't proficient English speakers, who might have lower health literacy rates, because the people who are typically engaged in this type of work are the ones that are willing to sit down and read a lot of these complex documents, and who might not be as engaged with their national patient organizations. So that's definitely some work that I think we still need to do on MP's side, and something that we're really committed to exploring in the year ahead as we seek to expand our task force. While we do have, I think, a diverse group of patients that we're working with, everyone from younger patients to people on different treatment lines and have had lots of different experiences. We certainly haven't covered the entire, population of myeloma. And something we really encourage and remind our advocates and our patient experts is that while we really want them to leverage their individual experience to benefit other patients, we really need them to represent their patient community. These are the patients and carers and advocates who are in the support groups, who are working closely with national organizations, who are connected to other patients. So when they're providing their input, it really should be bigger than their individual experience. That's of course critical, but to really think about what they're hearing and what they are seeing in their experience, in their day-to-day interaction with other patients. And I think from MP's side, we can do a better job of generating data from diverse patients to really bring in those experiences. I think we're making progress, but it's definitely something we can continue to work on.
I like that you speak to some of the challenges that your team is taking on, because it is the right work to do. And I mean, that certainly resonates with me in the work that we're doing at UPATI kind of on a constant basis. So thank you for sharing that. So now we're going to move to our next session and change gears to technological enhancements. I'm not sure if you caught what I did there, but moving into technological enhancements, I'll start this time with you, Justin. From a tech perspective, how are patient matchmaking platforms or patient platforms overall designed to engage users actively and sustainably? Can you share some of your insights into user-centered design approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. I think first and foremost, any sort of platform, from the first time somebody enters something to actually engaging, it needs to, and this is going to come as no surprise knowing what Savvy does, is needs to be designed with and for the end user. We've had countless times where we do prototype testing of different apps or different platforms, and the patients in the interviews are like, well, this doesn't make sense. Perfect example, and I'll use Savvy as a perfect example. We have a button on our website that says login/sign up, because quite frankly, on our backend interface, logging in and signing up is the same exact thing. But we had so much feedback early on from our own community saying, well, I already have an account. I don't want to sign up. I just want to log in. So it was a simple thing. We separated the two buttons into a login button and a sign up button. Transparently, they go to the exact same link, but it was a simple little tweak that allowed our community to feel a little bit more secure in that. And so really just thinking about what are those little tweaks, and don't even just think about it, like Lottie was saying, make sure that you are working with patient organizations to get their feedback. Especially, everyone on this call knows that there's a lot of red tape and hurdles to jump through if you're trying to talk directly to the end user. That's why companies like Savvy and various other things work, and why we can leverage MP and so on and so forth. But just making sure that it makes sense, because oftentimes the people who are the developers aren't the people who are going to be using the end product. So, it may make sense to how it's worked for the technological person, and I'm a very techie person, and I'll think, hey, what I'm designing right now works perfectly, and then I put it into the hands of somebody else, and it wasn't as dummy proof as I thought it was going to be. And also keeping in mind, I forget, one of the other panelists had said, like, thinking about your technological literacy and what kind of devices they may be accessing it from. They may be accessing it from a laptop. They may be accessing it from a smartphone. They may not have access to either one of those and have to go to like their local library and access it that way. And each of those different experiences is going to be very different. And so you need to really think about what is the way that we can get that. And we also can underscore the importance of sometimes going old school, like a phone call or a mailer. We talk about technology and we think iPhones, we think Android. But if you think about it, paper was the original technology. And sometimes the old school, might be old school, but it works. So I really think that, and making it something that is invites people to come and engage and share. One big question that we get a lot at Savvy is, this project that I'm signing up for, what's going to be done with my information? And, after years of getting this question, one of my project managers actually had the idea, well, in the application page, why don't we just put, here's what the purpose of this project is. And it was a simple thing where like, well, duh, we should have been doing that for years. So we talked with our developers and they were able to put it in there. And so we just write, and sometimes it's as simple as the client wants to understand the patient journey. But it gives a little bit more transparency, which is, I think, a topic we've kind of touched on a couple times throughout this morning or afternoon, evening, wherever you may be in the world. Morning for me personally. But I think it's one of those things that, again, this is gonna come back to every question I'm asked is design it with the patients. Don't just think what they want, ask them, and work with them. And, if you want them to use it, get their input early and often.
Thank you. Yeah. And Lotta, I turn to you. What are your thoughts on this, especially coming from more the patient platform perspective?
Yeah, I think it leans very much to what Justin already said. So what we also do is within our team, we have a dedicated design team that purely focus on user experience and user interface. So we obviously also start with a clean design, but also ensure a smooth user journey and seamless interaction with our users. So maybe not even starting with the design, but even start with the content or what the purpose is of what you would like to do, that your users are getting engaged with the type of content that you provide. So the information architecture is very important to us in our design team. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, it might be also very how do you say that? It's also very logical, let's say, but it's also not sometimes very easy. So it's about personalization and customization tools to integrate with that on the platforms. So what we try to do is we are a centralized platform. So meaning that I'm responsible for the regional side. But each country within the EMEA organization has their own country dedicated website, meaning on the regional side, we have jansenwithme.com, for example. But the Belgian side has a jansenwithme.be. And each site has its own URL and also their local language. So, and that I think is very important that the native language is available. And even so in Belgium, we have two languages. We have Dutch and French. So we also provide, like Justin was saying, with login and sign up. We have, for example, language selectors so that they can easily navigate through the French content and the Dutch content based upon what their native language is. But I think also importantly is like the very logical tools, but sometimes it's not that obvious, let's say, but a search functionality to integrate with that so that they can easily search for what they are looking for and find it. And then also the related content that we integrate. So when they are on a specific content type or on a specific topic, that they see directly other type of content materials, such as videos or a podcast that is related to that specific topic, so that you can give them the user journey that they are looking for and also in the best format that they need. Because some people love watching videos, but others love to read something. So it depends on who you are and what your preference is. And then also what Justin also touched base already upon login is for us also very important to have that personal touch so that they have a My Space, a My Profile, where they can bookmark pages that they think were interesting or downloads or automatically saved, because on a platform, it's easily gone. Let's say you download it on your iPhone, but you don't know where you have been putting it on. So if you go to that profile page, you easily can go there and just download it again, or you can start reading from there, from that MySpace. So that are just simple things that we try to do, but it makes the user's journey much more effective, let's say. And then, next to that, we try to have some engagement tools as well, such as social sharing options. For example, we have a service called Recipes on our platform. And if you think that recipe, that meal is something interesting for a peer that you know, then you can easily share that through a social platform, such as Facebook, for example. But we also have services that having a social or personal touch, such as Ask the Expert, which is anonymously that the user can anonymously provide questions to a healthcare provider, to a real healthcare provider. So I think that's something, a personal touch there. without any giving any information or such and like that, but also contact requests, which is a peer-to-peer connection where they can exchange experience with others as well. They can exchange their advice or sorry, their stories and their challenges and what they need to overcome, and yeah, share those stories. I think that also gives an empowerment of the patient and give them as well that engagement through the platform as well. And then last but not least, we try to continuously improve the platforms. And I think that is a very important one, not only for our platform, but for every platform that is out there, is to continuously improve upon that. And how you can do that is easily, again, ask for feedback with surveys, like what do you think is still missing? What type of content do you like most? And based upon that, you can easily improve your platform, but also check the data. And you have analytics available, and based upon those analytics, you can based upon that data, you can analyze the data, see what trends there are, and maybe change those trends if they are negatively, for example. And what we are now going to do as well is having user testing, so with real users understand what the platform still needs to improve. And what I mean with user testing for our platform, for example, is it's very important to be as accessible as possible so that disabled users can also have the content that they need in the best way. So for us, accessibility is high on the agenda.
Yeah.
And I think with that user testing, we can give that even a bit more touch there as well. So with all of that, with those little things, with those little changes, little improvements, we try to actively engage with our end users.
I think that's really fascinating. And I'd like to kind of keep in mind what you're saying here. As again, the title of this is, navigating the future of healthcare. So that brings to mind the role of these emerging technologies, HI, blockchain, etc. And how I'd love to get your thoughts on how you think these emerging technologies, what role they'll play in enhancing the effectiveness and security of patient matchmaking systems and in patient platforms, of course.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any particular technologies that show promise in this area and will help your team and patient platforms like you to do their job better?
Yeah, I think AI is still in their child shoes, or how do you see that? I'm not a native English.
In their early years.
That's clear, I think.
Yes.
But I think everybody gets it, what I'm trying to say. But it's there, but it's also not there yet. And we're still exploring. But I think AI and emerging technologies in general can do so much for our platforms. And like I mentioned already, Janssen with me is a centralized platform. So we serve from a regional point of view. So we try, and what our end goal is of course for the end users, but our stakeholders are the countries. And we support the countries by trying to reduce time, effort, and costs as much as we can locally for them. So with AI or emerging technologies in general, we try to do that and integrate that by achieving those goals to reduce time and effort on their behalf. What I mean with the central platform is that all the content is being served from one service content management system. So all of the content is centralized in there. So with that one system, we can do actually, we can integrate AI by actually providing localization and translating the content through AI tools. So that you not only copy the regional content to your local site, but automatically it's also translated, for example. So that maybe is one thing that you could do. But also we have lots of forms on our platforms, and not only on the patient-facing platform, but also on the HCP-facing platform. And I think with other organizations, they also have platforms where forms are heavily integrated. But yeah, with those open form texts, it's easy that an adverse event is really being reported, or even PI3 data is being reported by accident. And with AI, they can scan that, they can block that, or push that back, or give them the user a notification like, hey, you are reporting adverse event here, this is not the right space to do so, or something like that. So that is also something that we are trying to emerging technologies for. And then with our Ask the Expert service, which I just called out a few minutes ago, is the also the form where the users can ask a question to the HCP. So those questions are being sent to the HCP so he can provide an answer. But with AI, they can already generate that answer. So based upon the question. So there's also one thing that we're going to explore in the future. But of course, we would like to keep the personal touch, because the strong purpose of the Ask the Expert is that you're getting a personal feedback, of course, from the HCP. But meaning with that generation, I use AI all the time. And you can read it, but you can modify it so that it's getting personal for what you think is the best answer. And that is the same what we're going to do with the HCPs as well. We can provide them an answer that leans to the question, but of course they can modify it to whatever they want. And then on our platform, we always have a medical review that we need to do. So the content needs to be reviewed. And I think that content is available for 2 years. And after those 2 years, you need to either renew the content, or you need to do a review cycle again to be compliant. But yeah, as you know, you change roles, you change responsibilities in the organization, or you leave the organization. So the ownership of that content is also going to change. And sometimes that change of responsibility is being forgotten or overlooked. So with that said, it might be that the expiration date is already overdue, and that you're not compliant anymore with the content. So you need to take that one down, and that makes a big hurdle, let's say. So what also could be done is with AI is that expiry date, a notification is being sent on multiple systems, so that multiple people are getting notified by, oh, hey guys, this is going to be due soon. Please make sure that you start a new review cycle, or that you update your content, for example.
Got it.
And then last but not least, with AI, you can also generate new content. So not only translating content, but definitely also create new content. So what we are going to explore on our platform, for example, is not create related content manually that is related to the topic that you're looking for, but it's going to be scanning your platform like, okay, this is the topic that is the same as what you're now are looking at. So we are going to feed that to that user, so that it's a constantly user journey that the user can take on, and it's getting a closed loop in the platform.
Thank you. I'd like to bring this question over to Justin, because Katie, I know we're going to talk a bit more in the social implications side, but Justin, if you briefly want to have a response to that before moving over, I'd be very curious to hear also how patient matchmaking platforms can be responding to emerging technologies, similar to how patient platforms and Lata's role is doing.
Yeah, and I think, AI is exciting. It is potentially scary. We've all seen that Will Smith documentary, I, Robot. And I do believe that's a documentary, that's not a feature film, from my understanding. But I think being transparent in what AI is being used for, and how exactly it's being used. I know on our research platform, our developers came up with a way that we can have our interviews, and then it can pull out bullet points, very much like I have one of these types of programs for my personal Zoom, and it's great, and it's making sure that I can, rather than having to sit there and furiously take notes, I can turn on my note taker, and at the end of the meeting it spits out key takeaways. And we were very, very excited about that type of thing. But then our CEO, Jen, who is a patient herself, wanted to make sure that the data that was being used by the AI wasn't going anywhere. It was staying, it wasn't being used for future training. It was just used for that. And so, I sat down with the developers and made sure that it would be staying in-house. And, and we had a lengthy discussion, and if a patient ever questions, how AI is used, or a potential client is how we're using AI, we can speak to that. And so I think making sure that we're leveraging AI for that purpose. And I think that's really all these different emerging technologies. I know it's very much in their infancy, like Lottie said. So making sure that we're making sure that we're not trying to run before we can walk. Sometimes, we do want to make sure that we are moving forward with technology, but we're not sacrificing, patient security for advances in technology.
I like that. I appreciate that. And I think that actually leads us really well into our final section of our panel discussion, which is around social implications. And so, Katie, now as we move into thinking about the social implications for patient matchmaking, I would love to start off by getting your perspective on the following. How do patient matchmaking systems and patient platforms contribute to community building among patients? And what impact does this have on their healthcare journey and potentially also a more global patient-centered solutions?
Thanks. So in our experience, we hear from patients that the opportunity to provide input in the R&D process is very valuable for them. It feels like a tangible way for them to use their experience and expertise to improve research, improve clinical trial design, improve the collection of patient experience data, patient education, all of that. So I think, holistically, it feels like an opportunity where they can really make an impact. But where we struggle, and Justin had mentioned including the way the data would be used, where we struggle a bit is understanding what is that long-term impact. There isn't a consistent feedback loop on how their input is changing things. So we can share with patients what the goal of the engagement is, but we don't have consistent commitments and processes in place from industry and academia to understand what the feedback is doing and how that might be impacting things or improving things in the long term. And I think that's a real gap if we're looking at long-term kind of global implications of this, and also really making sure that the patient community. I would really like to see, and I imagine a lot of the other patient advocates and patients and carers on this call would agree with, is I think call it where companies and institutions are making a true commitment to doing patient engagement. Oh, sorry, is my internet connection unstable? Can you hear me okay?
It freezes for just a second. So if you started to say something around what you and your peers, so patient organizations would really like to see, and it was in response to primarily industry. So would love to get that sentence one more time.
Yeah. Am I back? Can you hear me okay now?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I think, and it's not just industry, it's academic institutions too. So I won't only pick on industry in this call. But I think we need to see like a true commitment in doing this well and doing this consistently across companies, across disease areas within companies. Everything feels very patchy. We work with a lot of companies at MP, and we have examples, great examples, bad examples, good and bad examples within the same company. And it seems like what we really need is kind of a referendum on how to do this well, where everyone can, as the patient community, we can agree this is what we want and this is how we want you to work with us. And we want that to be early and meaningful and effective. And we need to hold industry and academic institutions accountable when they say they are patient-centric or patient-first or whatever the terminology is. How are they proving that, and how are they committed to that across the organization? So when one person changes roles, or when something happens, or the patient engagement team might not be speaking with the R&D team effectively, how can we break down those barriers so that we can really do this in a way that changes research to benefit patients and to benefit essentially the ones who will be using new medicines, using new treatments, or benefiting from the research?
Great response. From my perspective, no note. So great. I would honestly, I'd love to welcome Justin and Lotta to respond to that.
Yes,
If
we
you
may-
have a response.
Go ahead.
I have a response, but I wanted to give Lotta the opportunity to go
No,
first.
go for it.
Yeah, I think, Katie, one thing that you really you said that really resonated with me is closing that feedback loop. Because that is something, we hear time and time again. I participated in this project. What happened with my information? And it's they're genuinely curious. So one thing that we've implemented that I think is, again, kind of a no-brainer, it's just something that everybody needs to commit to, is we ask our clients, once we finish out a project, can you write a brief statement that we can share with the participants of the project? We keep everything double blinded, so our client doesn't know who it necessarily was in the project. Our participants don't know who the client was, and we act as the middleman. So they write a perspective or a little retrospective of what the project was, what the intended outcomes either are or will be, because we know sometimes these actual implementing the outcomes can sometimes take months, if not years. But letting them know, hey, we heard from your experiences, and this is what we plan to do, or this is what we already have done with it. And that's one of my favorite parts of my job, is I get to read all of those feedback that the clients submit, and then I get to send them out to the participants. It's a task that necessarily doesn't take a lot of time, but it's something that I feel very strongly, as someone who has my hand in every single little project, making sure that it gets to. And I will tell you that our community loves hearing back from that. We send out a ton of emails. We send out newsletters. We send out updates on different projects. But the single area that we get the most feedback in is those messages. And they just say, thank you for letting me know what they did. And, I was honored to be part of this. And I respond to them and I said, no, we're honored that you gave up your time to work with us. And then they come back and they say, no, I'm honored that I was picked. And it's just a vicious cycle. But it really does help, just making sure, and it doesn't have some of the greatest feedback emails that I've been able to send out on behalf of clients are 2 sentences. And it's nothing, we all live in the world of email nowadays, and you don't want to think about one more email, but that one more email can make a big difference. And so I encourage anybody listening to make sure that, if you're asking these people to give up their time and share their experiences, which can be, good, bad, and the ugly, take 30 seconds to write a recap email. We've had, this started years ago when I started with Savvy. One client offered to do this. They said, can I write an email to the participants? And I said, yes, please. Like, I'm not going to turn that down. So when Katie said something like that, I was like, yes, that should be commonplace. That should not be, the anomaly.
Thank you. And Lotta, any thought you have on that in
Yeah,
response to Katie or Justin?
Yeah, no, for us it's quite complex to send emails to the end users, which are potential patients. So we need to keep it very low level. So, but what we do is we have NPS surveys on our website to ask them what they think of the content, how they would like to see future content being implemented, what type of content they like, and so on. So based upon that, we can give that feedback back to the content owners, let's say, so that they can improve the content. But also, it might be also giving the HCPs some insights on what the patients experience with the treatment that they get, but also adapt their practices to better meet patients' needs as well. So we also have not only general NPS surveys, but we also have on the treatment information that we provide, so that we know that it's an eligible user, and only users that are prescribed with the treatment come to that specific content. There we can ask them specific questions like what did you think of this content, and maybe even open questions It's still a doubt phase if we can have open questions towards patients, because yeah, of course, at first events we can be reported or even patient data that we don't want to keep. But yeah, in any case, we're still exploring those options to also have that more of a specific feedback to improve whatever we can give to them. So for us, it's quite low level, let's say, but we do ask feedback because I think it's easy to integrate and it gives lots of insights for both the platform owners, but also for the HCPs. You can route that back and give that information to those HCPs so that they can also adapt their way of working with patients.
Great. So and I mean that actually leaves us with a number of different things to mull over in our mind. And I will say to the three of you, thank you for this great discussion. I now want to turn it over to our participants who I see already have some questions for you. During the question and answer discussion, we want to make sure that there's a space for our participants to pose questions both in the Q&A box, which we see we've got three, well, actually maybe two, and one a two-parter questions so far, but also that there's a chance for everyone to ask their questions verbally if they'd like to. So we'll go ahead and remove, everyone can come off of mute when they have a question to ask. Please use the raised hand signal in your reactions box so we know you'd like to ask a question of us. And I guess I can get us started with the first question. This is from one of our anonymous participants. Is there a future for single company funded e-platforms? So compliments to Janssen to at least be open about it. Some are less so, but there is so much evidence that patients and other members of the public do not trust such e-platforms. Please, can you comment on different alternatives? So potentially co-funded platforms, funding via patient group, or others. And they say thank you for your response. So we'd love to turn this, I guess, over to Lotte in the first instance. But Justin, Katie, if you have other thoughts, would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And it's indeed very important that you are trustworthy and that the end users are trusting you with the e-platform. So what we try to do is, in the first place, provide disease awareness. So to give information on the disease itself, but also give them tools to have their healthcare journey in their own hands. And I think that is the end goal that we all want, that patients are empowered with information on their disease and what treatments are out there. And that is also the goal of what we have on our platform, to make sure that we provide the information, and starting with the disease awareness information, but next to that also information on the treatment that is there, but give them tools like very low level, what they can ask to their doctor if they're not diagnosed yet, but they think they are suffering from a certain disease, that they can have those tools, those questions available when they see a doctor or a specialist, but also provide articles and content on a daily basis. So we have, for example, if you have suffering from psoriasis and have lots of articles on that, how to deal with the disease in the daily life. For example, an article on how to use which type of sunscreen to use. What do you need to do when you go abroad and you're having a holiday in the sun, or even you want to yourself a tattoo or a piercing? What do you need to watch out for? So those really day-to-day things that might be a challenge or you don't know the answer, that is the content that we try to provide. And then next step, beyond that, we try to provide personalized services, such as that contact request I was talking about, which is the peer-to-peer connection. So we are not, we just gave the tools to make sure that you can have an exchange of experience with others, with peers as well. And also the Ask the Expert, for example, where we can have the HCPs where we are contracted with, that they can provide an answer to those questions. So with that, we try to close the loop as much as we can, but like we mentioned already, we try to engage as much as we can with patient organizations and understand what the patient's needs are, and react upon that, and provide those needed content on the platforms, or even build a service that they think that is needed for them to be more empowered and to take the healthcare journey in their own hands.
Got it. Justin, Katie, would you want to respond to this idea of the future of e-platforms and maybe ways that this can work together with patient organizations or other third parties? Or not, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll keep mine short and sweet, but I think just disclosing up front, you know, who is helping fund it and how's it going to be used. That, you know, I said earlier that a lot of the times we keep our clients blinded from the participants, but in one particular suggestion or scenario, Savvy was, and I can say this publicly because it's on the website, so I'm not going to break any sort of NDA and get myself in trouble or anything. But we're working with BI and the Sarcoma Foundation of America to work on a liposarcoma survey. And upfront, everything is co-branded. It has our logo, the BI's logo, it has our Sarcoma Foundation logo in the description. And we're just very upfront saying, you know, BI is the one who is funding this. We're partnering with SFA to help find patients and to drive this forward. And we're facilitating everything and just being, you know, we've had great feedback from the community. You know, we're being very transparent and upfront. And, you know, there's nothing bad with transparency. Obviously, you know, I'm not a lawyer, so don't just go out there and start disclosing everything. This is in no way legal advice. But I think the more transparency that you can have within limits is going to allow everybody to move forward.
I think that's been the general sentiment and theme both of the panel in the chat. So thank you for that, Justin. And Katie, how would you respond to that in your role?
Yeah, so I completely echo Justin's comments around transparency. I think that's critical in any sort of sponsored work that we're doing. And I think, you know, obviously having multiple sponsors is always helpful, but I think that's not always possible, and it's better to deliver something that's important for the patient community when it's needed. I would just say when thinking about this, like in our experience, and we don't have an e-platform or anything like what Savvy and Janssen with me does. So we're the least tech company here. But I think what's been helpful when speaking with industry about potential solutions for some of this, not just funding, but what are some other creative ways where they might be able to support the patient community in delivering things that they need. So for us, translations are a huge challenge. We have 26 languages in Europe, plus additional ones that we support in our Israeli and Armenian organizations. So how are we supposed to ensure, again, diversity and inclusion when there's a language barrier? So are there other ways that industry can support in facilitating better access to some of these platforms, these materials, the ways that patients can be included in this process? And I think also speaking, I think, Justin, you maybe said this earlier, like when conceiving what a tool could be or what needs to kind of what platform should be built to respond to these needs, asking the patient community what they need is the most important first step. So I think if industry is looking to build something or to support something, making sure that they're not coming to us with a plan, but asking for what we need from us and where they can be most supportive is really the biggest benefit, because again, it's a single disease area that we're working with, but we might have the ability to build something, but other disease areas and other organizations that are much smaller aren't going to be able to build an e-platform and run it successfully. So is that a place where, you know, an innovative partnership between industry, an organization like Savvy, and a disease area or disease organization like MP could come together to build something that's really beneficial? So I think really understanding what the actual need is and what tool could meet that need is where we should all begin.
Great. You mentioned, translation and language as an opportunity for greater inclusivity. Would you also include lay language as part of that as well, right? So and this is also an area that you could be looking to industry for support in as they build out these departments that focus on that more specifically.
Yeah, I think we encourage everything to be in lay language where possible. I mean, that's beneficial for lots of people, not just patients, but everyone that's kind of working in this field. None of us are, most of us aren't scientists. So I think it's really helpful to have something distilled in a way that's actually beneficial for people. So we push not just lay language, obviously lay language materials and the need for patient input on those to make sure they're truly clear and appropriate and contain the information that patients need. But lay summaries of trial results, lay summaries of PRO data, lay summaries of research results, anything that can bring value to the patient community and understanding what this work is, I think is really important. And there's, it's usually kind of the last thing on everyone's mind when you're getting through, the research and the project and the dissemination of that publication, to make something that's beneficial for patients. But I think it's critical in that process that we're able to understand what all of this data and the trial results and all of that means for patients, and that needs to come through lay language.
Thank you for that. And I see that we also have a question from Valentina, and so Valentina, I do encourage you to come off of mute if you want to give a little bit more information around the question. But here you're talking about the use of AI in the work your team is doing at the Ukrainian Diabetic Federation. And you're saying that you were using AI just for screening for this retinopathy. If you want to kind of shape that question for us a little bit more, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My question is according new for me style of I using, and I would like to know where I can looking for the your approaching, and you are talking about using AI for analyzing patients' calling and so on. So where I can check in materials about that, or maybe it can be another session for deeply understanding this direction.
So I believe I understand what you're saying is you'd love to get some tips and some resources around where we are looking to find information or using AI more specifically. Is that correct?
Yes. So
I think top line, we can maybe take a stab at answering that amongst the panel, and then more detail, we can maybe follow up via email, or that could be a specific session, because I know more sessions are coming down the pipe. But if anyone on the panel would like to take a step at, top line resources that you're using in the space of AI, that could support Valentina and her organization's work, that would be great.
I think it depends on what the needs are, because I see the question coming in that you were using AI just for screening. But yeah, AI can do so much more, and emerging technologies can do so much more, but it depends on what the needs are for our platform. For example, we are serving the countries. So what we try to do is make their life easier by reduce time and effort by providing them an AI tool that is going to translate the content from English to the native language. But it depends on what your needs are. And I think based upon that, you can search for a specific tool that meets, your needs.
No, not for translation, but for analyzing patients, calling patients letter for making better communication. You said that the AI can answer on the question of the patients, and how it can be done, how we can use this for our people with diabetes, because now we have lack of physician, lack of nurses in our country, and we have to support our people in this field.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share the tool with you, but there is a tool that we integrated or we're exploring, because we're not using it at the moment. We're going to explore with it. And it's scanning the question that is coming in. And it's in our system that it's first, of course, being approved if the question is valid, if the question is compliant, and then it goes sent through the HCP. But then the tool will pick it up first before it's sent to the HCP. So that question is being scanned, and based upon that scanning, they can provide an answer, that AI tool, and then it's being sent to the HCP, and then the HCP can decide whether he's going to send the question as it is because he's approving it, or the HCP can also decide to override the question and modify it to modify his answer so that it's matching the question, let's say, or matching whatever he thinks is the best answer to answer that question. But again, it's a tool that we're exploring with. We're not there yet. It's a possibility that we're going to take on, but that might be a possibility for you as well, to indeed, if you're a lack of resources, because for us it's also a tool that we're going to introduce just because reducing the time of that HCP, because of course that HCP has lots of other responsibilities as well. So we don't want to make too much of his time. And with that, it might also be a tool for you as well. You're most welcome to always connect with me, Valentina, offline or via LinkedIn. And then we can see if I can help you even more upon that.
Yeah, thank you. This is just for my question, and you have to know that we have a lot of IT person with very good background, and they can help us, but I would like to show the direction, this new direction for our platform, and so we can build some very useful tool.
Okay.
Lotte, thank you for that. And Valentina, thank you very much for your question. Again, we can go ahead and try to follow up a little bit more in our follow-up email, and then Lotte has invited you to be in touch with her. So love to keep the conversation going. I'm sorry, we're actually going to have to switch gears a little bit more to our co-creation section. So this is the start of the questions. We're going to turn the tables a little bit, and at this point I'll go ahead and invite my colleague Boyan to share the screen a bit, once again, to show us the Slido information and how to log in. And then as well, Daniela will be sharing the link and the code in the chat. So this will be a time for us to continue this discussion and also think about other questions that we can be responding to in our email. So if you'll each grab your smartphones if you have them, or if you want to go ahead and go to slido.com and add in the code, then we'll get started soon. And so just so you know, each of our panelists were asked, if you had questions that you want to ask our participants, what would they be? And each of our panelists were great and came up with a question that they have on their mind. So I'll go ahead by starting to read the questions, and then we ask that you please go ahead and vote in Slido. And then each of our panelists will be taken over by kind of discussing the answers that they're seeing and giving any thoughts or asking of you maybe what you're thinking about or what your organization is thinking about with regards to some of these questions. So Boyan, how are we doing? Do we have a number of people already signed in? Do we think we're ready for the first question?
Yeah, I think we can go on.
Okay, super.
I will move to the question.
Okay, awesome. So if you'll please we can go to the next slide then to start looking at the opinion. So first question, in your opinion, who should be facilitating matchmaking as a technological tool or platform? This is kind of this is actually very much in keeping with with the first question around e-platforms. We'll give some time for a few more answers to come in. Okay. And how are we looking with regards to responses, Boyan?
I think 16 people voted so far.
Okay, so if we can get a few more responses in. Or if there's anyone having problems also getting into Slido, also feel free to come off of mute and let us know. And we're happy to support you. Okay, well, let's see if we can get to maybe 20 more or 20 respondents, and then we can go. I think that'll be about 50% of those of us on the line. Okay. Katie, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing so far?
Yeah, I think the response isn't too surprising. So I would have been really, really surprised if we saw a big push for industry or even academia to lead this. So I think it makes total sense that it's between the trusted advisor or a patient organization. I think maybe in my perspective as a patient organization, I think that there's a bit of a opportunity for partnership here. I think it's a ton of work to do this kind of matchmaking, and it's a huge time and resources that a lot of patient organizations don't have. Or there's also situations where there might not be a patient organization that's representing that disease area, and that's really where I think organizations like Savvy Cooperative can be extremely, and UPATI are really integral into this process, and they can make it possible for patients who otherwise wouldn't be able to participate, let their experiences and their perspectives be known. And so I think there's some good synergy here between an organization like Savvy and MP, where we can really work together to help improve this process and to make sure that the diverse voices are heard. So yeah, I'm not too surprised. Would be interested if anyone in the audience has a preference for either of these, and also interested in the ones that voted for the academic response as well.
Donna, would you like to say something? Please certainly come off mute. Or I can, yes, perfect.
I am off mute. Thank you very much, first of all, for the great moderation, Ebony, and for a good discussion. I'm like you. I'm not surprised by this, and I think that, as very often, the answer is both. We keep still does not fit everything. One tool does not fit everything, and here we're asking the question as if one should do everything. There would be situations where I would not want the patient organization to do it. For example, in some countries, you actually have competing patient organizations within the same disease, and they're truly competing. That's a situation where I would go to a trusted other party. Another situation is where the basic treatment of the disease requires me to have multiple treatments, like in many cancer forms, which totally excludes the single company platform, which was the previous discussion, because that company, no matter how good they are, can never help me when I'm trying to find how the two drugs, one of theirs plus one of another company, work together. Or again, to a trusted party or to the patient organization. But I think we have to, first of all, be very concerned that we have so few numbers of input here. If we have a meeting of almost 50 interested people in this topic of who only half vote, how are we even thinking that we're going to get patient input in the platforms we're building for the future? The second point is we need. Thank you for letting me give that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I feel like Laura has encouraged us all to participate a little bit more in this Slido conversation, in this participant co-creation all together. And I think we should take up the mantle on that. So thank you for that, Laura, and thank you for your comment. Katie, do you have anything to add?
No, I would agree, though, that it's not a single answer. And I think we know that from today, there's not a single response to this challenge. And I think it will take, trusted third parties, trusted advisors, patient organizations, and of course, there's a role for academia and industry as well in making this possible for patients to easily engage.
Super. So let's go ahead and move on to our third question in the poll, or second question in the poll, rather. All right. So this next question is coming from our colleagues at Savvy Cooperative. They'd like to know, how much do you feel you can trust technological platforms with your information in your that was a bit of a typo, with your information or your personal information in particular? So we have, completely trust, no reservations about this. Mostly trust. I feel relatively safe sharing my information, but cautious. Somewhat trust, rarely trust, and then, never trusting, and you're avoiding sharing your personal information, period. Which perhaps maybe never trust is not participating in this call, but, one can argue that. Okay.
Come on, we need more than 18.
Then we get to 25 at least this time. And we realize it's towards the end of the day for those of you calling European and in Europe and in the rest of the world. So we get that it's towards the end of your day, but we appreciate your participation. And if possible, can we also scroll down just a little bit more to kind of see some of those final results? Okay. That's interesting to me that there's more people who never trust than those that are rarely trust. But maybe it's a fine line between what those are. So at this point, I would say I know that Justin had to take care of a personal matter very fast. He'll be back with us in just a bit. But for the sake of time, let's go ahead and move on to the third question and see if
Ebony,
maybe we can. Oh,
I am.
okay, great. Justin, you're back. Yes?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so I can, just like Katie said, not surprised by these responses. The somewhat and mostly are kind of the middle ground options. And I think that reflects how a lot of people feel about technological platforms and personal information. You know, it is scary, I guess, for lack of a better term, to put your information out there and not know exactly where it's going or how you feel about it. I think that's how most of us, you know, when we get terms and conditions on anything, we kind of blindly accept them without really knowing what exactly it's being used for. I think the question I'd like to pose back to the audience, one project we worked on at Savvy a couple years ago was specifically around health privacy and health data. And one thing that came up in the interviews that we conducted with people who went anywhere, just like from they completely trust to they never trust. They said kind of an adopting a nutrition label type approach to how personal information shared, or kind of like how credit cards send those disclosures. Here's how we will and how we will not use your information. Question I want to pose back to the audience here, if we have time, is how would that possibly change your answers if technological platforms were a little bit more user-friendly or easily understood in how they're going to be using your personal information? So I'll open that up if anyone wants to come off mute and share their thoughts.
Nora, I see you there. We'll see if anyone else will raise their hand. And if not, we'll want to hear your response in any case. So to Justin's question, what would make you change your response to towards more trusting of these sites? Would it be more transparency, more user friendliness? All right, Laura, representing for our participants on the call, please let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sad that I have to speak up because I really want to call on everyone in the call to speak up and participate actively, as you said at the intro. But I would say that it would not change anything, unfortunately, in spite of Justin. I totally appreciate it because and there's enough research about this. It's the concern about hackability. You can be as transparent and user-friendly as you want. We have continuous stories of hackers going into utility companies and taking our data there or somewhere else. So our data leak through all kinds of things. So the user friendliness, transparency, all very well intended, are not what prevent sharing. It's the safety of the system, which I, as a layperson, cannot judge anyway. So I'm going to always have that same approach. So it's not intent that will switch my voting, because there's just too many examples of this being hacked left, right, and center. Does that make sense to you, Justin?
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate you chiming in, because that's transparently not something I had thought of before. So thank you for sharing your take on that.
Yeah, but I would say, Luda, something that resonates with me as also a more lay person, such as yourself in these topics. So thank you for bringing that to the fore. And Diane, I see that you have your hand up. Would love to hear from you as well. Or Diane, I'm sorry if I'm
Yes,
pronouncing
no,
your name wrong.
no, Ebony, Diane is right. The spelling is
Super.
driving people crazy. I agree with Load. I don't think it's anything that we can change in the system. I think it's a matter of experience. We do see the leaks everywhere. I work myself with several different platforms, and even I have my concerns. So I think it's just going to be a matter of time and getting more experience, and also the platforms getting to be more experienced with security.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And I'll also turn to Sharmila, and then Justin would love to get your thoughts from both of their responses. Thank you, Diane. Sharmila, please. Let us know if you need help coming off of mute.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, maybe speak a little bit louder and we can hear you.
Oh, sure. Is it better?
Much, yes.
Okay. I probably would not say completely trust, even if there's some improvements. I probably would change my answer. My answer was somewhat trust, but I probably would say mostly trust if there's some improvements with all the issues that we have with the technology, with all the hacking and all that stuff. So that's why I have a lack of trust.
Fair enough. Justin, what are your thoughts as you hear more from our audience?
Yeah, I think I appreciate, first and foremost, the three people who spoke up to share their perspectives, because, you know, it is, especially if you're in the middle or towards I guess we didn't have anyone rarely, but moving, you know, the needle all the way up to completely. I think what everybody said is completely founded, and I believe that as we do move towards better transparency and better integrations and better improvements, I think that these are all valid thoughts, and I appreciate everybody sharing them.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to our third question and slide out, if you will, Brian. Great. So, and this one is coming from Lotta. So AI is still in the earlier stages, with many organizations experimenting and learning, while others are starting to integrate tools more over the long term, so kind of further along in this continuum. So along the kind of the two peers or the two areas of the continuum, where would you say your organization currently exists? And again, we want to go for a good number of respondents. We see we have 36 participants. So in our last question, let's try to get some participation. And then Boyan, if you would scroll down a little bit just so we can kind of see all of the potential answers. Perfect. Thank you. Well, please try to get to at least 20 answers. Let's see if we can do it.
We need one more.
Yeah.
Yay. Lola is happy.
So Lotta, I kick it over to you.
Yeah, again, not surprising. I think, like I mentioned before, AI is still in the very early stages, I think, although it's there already for a long time. But yeah, I think it's all now getting a little bit more of stable, let's say, or more secured, or more things that we can do with it. So yeah, the responses such as just beginning or not currently even, or experimenting is the ones that I already thought of. But I would love to hear from the participants on those who are integrating already, or experimenting, or just beginning, what they are doing with AI in their organizations, if someone is willing to share.
One thing I would maybe also posit is, I know on our call today, we have a number of participants from maybe patient organizations or more nonprofit, and we also have a number of private participants, which is great to see. I wonder sometimes if maybe that is not a matter of resources, and then maybe the larger organizations have more resources that they can have a team that's just focusing on AI versus others who, I can tell you from Upati, we all have our roles that we're doing, but we remain busy, and we kind of all put our heads and hands together as needed, but maybe the time and space to really think about every AI technology and what is best suited, we might not have that space. Lotta, I'd love for you to argue with me and say, nope, maybe that's not quite it, or, you know, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
No, definitely. I think, yeah, if you're in a big organization, then everybody has his own roles and responsibilities. It's also not only with our organization within J&J that we are focusing on AI or exploring with AI. We have multiple departments that are working on AI. So even in our organization, it's seeking and exploring what we currently already have, and how they experiment with it. So yeah, definitely, I can understand that the participants that are here that probably are in an organization or a big organization where they're not being focused on AI or immersion technologies at all. So yeah, no, that's totally not arguable. It has its own responsibilities that I didn't, yeah.
But I think also, and Katie and Justin, I'd encourage you to jump in if none of our participants have want to raise their hand to speak. But I think it's encouraging to see that we have so many saying they're just at the beginning of their journey. This kind of opens up this idea of where could we see some synergies happening, but would love to get Justin and Katie, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think I voted that we were just at the beginning. I think for us, there's still so much that we don't know. We are, I guess, MPs a small organization in terms of like a typical size organization, although we have members that are much smaller, so we don't have the real resources or capacity to take this on at an organizational level. I think it is probably something at a patient community level we need to be looking at, because the problems or the challenges or the solutions that AI could bring to myeloma can be, applied in breast cancer or applied in MS or wherever. So I think we as a patient community need to really think about where AI can help us. And I think our concerns right now are really around protecting patients and protecting the integrity of data and what's shared, and potential complications that can come from using AI incorrectly. So I think we're still very much at the beginning of this, but I would hope that this is something together we can look at as a patient community, because it doesn't make sense for MP to look at this individually, because it's not just us. So I think that's something where there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration across diseases, and also with trusted advisors, and even with other stakeholders like academic and industry as well, because everyone needs to understand what the implications of this are for patients.
I love this. Your response going to this patient community. We share the knowledge and resources we have in the greater community. I love that.
Yeah, and I love it as well. I'd also echo a lot of what Katie says. Anytime we're evaluating a use of AI, is first and foremost what patient data protection does it provide. That, and my baby also feels that same way. But the other way that we've been using it a lot, as I mentioned earlier, we used it. You do like AI. I'm like that guy from the Zoom meeting in that video that went viral. But anyways, we've been using it for, like I said, to support our researchers, and we use a lot of generative AI to make sure that we are putting things in layperson language. We'll write something, maybe an abstract, and say, write this at somebody, at a more accessible language. And how we've been using a lot of AI is what we say around the company is to work smarter, which is a combination of smarter and faster. And so if it's something that, you can put a prompt into AI and say, write an email or write something that has these informations, and, GPT can generate that in a matter of seconds. And we just need to make different changes. I think that's been very helpful, and we're at the forefront of AI. So we want to use it for good and the best that we can.
Super. Una, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm coming to this from a public perspective, and I just wonder, when you link it to the previous question about trust, whether if you move too fast with AI before the public understand it and what it is that you're doing, whether people will lose trust. And certainly I've seen things in applications to stuff that I do that look like they've been completed using AI, and they don't always sound particularly human, for want of a better word. So I just wonder whether there might be an issue around trust, particularly around sharing information, if you think that AI is having a hand in looking after that, whether that be an issue or otherwise. It's not about reality, it's about people's perception. And I just wonder whether that would be an issue for people.
Yeah, I think with AI, I think I also saw it in the chat about the errors being applied without human review. So I think it's still important that we have a human review. So from J&J perspective, if we create content, everything needs to be medical reviewed. So before it goes live, that content it needs to be reviewed by certain departments. And I think if you generate content or you provide content to the users, it still needs to be reviewed as well. And I think that is the importance here, that you still have that human review before doing that. And I think by using AI as much as we can, AI is also getting more experienced. And I think with that, the more that we use it and not try it out, but at least with the human review that we still have that, we are getting more experience with AI. AI is getting more experienced. And with that, I think with that being more experienced, we can further expand that in those technologies in any kind of platform or usage that we are doing.
Yeah.
If I could add to that, I was the one who wrote the human review in the chat because that was me. So I think Lode was mentioning, like, because I brought up translation several times, and he said, why don't you use some of the tools like the ones we're using today, which is of course, we can use tools and we try to, and we have explored them. The challenge for what a lot of the work MPE does is that it's document review and it's confidential document review, and it's all in English. So I think I'm pretty sure I know the industry doesn't want me uploading their protocols to an AI tool that's going to use that confidential document to improve. And we also know from our own experience of translating things that even with a a professional translator, mistakes happen. So how are we going to, I don't personally think there's a tool ready yet that can translate accurately a complex document, accurately translate the feedback from a patient that might have colloquial or local language into nuanced feedback. And all of that can be done without actually sharing any of the content with an AI tool that's trying to learn to improve, because I can't share that document with anyone outside of MPE. So hopefully there will ultimately be a tool that can do that easily. But at this point, we're not there, and it would still require a lot of time and resources on the human side. So I think, but ultimately, I do hope we get to a place where that's possible, but I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah,
and I think that brings in also, Katie, your comment about it being a community solution, right? So the trust comes also as people are working on things together that is safe information to share. You're very right. And also working together with one another and working together with the tools. So if it's very idyllic at this point, but there are practical steps towards this, where you say, if we get everyone involved in community solutions and share best practices, the AI gets better, we get more confident and trusting of the tools that we've set out and said we're going to use.
Definitely.
Yeah. So thank you all. I think we're kind of coming to time. So I'd like us to go maybe to the next slide, please, Boyan. So thank you all for your participation today. We will certainly take the feedback and responses we've seen as we continue our work. And we hope that this is, again, just the start of a conversation for you. Before we sign off today, we'd like to make you aware of upcoming PEOF virtual sessions taking place in April. In order to stay up to date on all the upcoming events, please continue to visit the Synergist site. Links will be posted by Daniela in the chat, both for these events as well as the Synergist website overall. Additionally, we will in the coming week, we'll be sharing an email with the highlights of today's sessions, as well as a survey, just to get your thoughts on how things went and give you a little time to kind of digest some of the information. Thank you again for joining us, and my sincere thanks to our panelists. And thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.